Hey everybody, welcome to Mammoth Interactive's YouTube channel. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. And remember that this channel doesn't do Patreon. Instead, we sell our digital courses down below. And every single dollar that we get from the products you buy below goes into making more content. The best way to help out this channel and Mammoth Interactive is to subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. Get thousands of hours and hundreds of courses for a low price down below. We have a monthly option and a yearly option. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the video.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to do an overview of all the topics and interview questions that we are covering in this course. First off, we are going to look at restricting and sorting data. We're going to solve interview questions like listing alphabetically, listing in a specified range by multiple properties, listing all the characters in a property, finding consecutive numbers, calculating percentages, and many more. After that, we are looking at joining data. We're going to solve interview questions like listing streams, joining two tables, joining values across tables, joining three tables, finding the average across multiple tables, and product sales analysis. All that and more in section 2. After that, in section 3, we are going to cover aggregating functions. We're going to solve interview questions like counting distinct properties, listing the total sum, getting minimums and maximums, getting the average, getting the difference between the maximum and the minimum, and many more. Then finally, in section 4, we will look at sub-querying. We're going to solve interview questions like finding higher values, finding all of a type, listing all above average, listing all who have more, getting the case maximum and minimum values, and many more. We'll learn how to use subqueries within subqueries within subqueries in some circumstances. In order to run our SQL code, we'll be using REPL.it. This is a free website where you can instantly test your code live without even having to sign up or pay. We are not requiring any installation of any software or prior experience. We're just going to use REPL.it. Just type that into your browser and you'll be able to find this website where you can test all of your code instantly. Let's take a look at how you can run a REPL file. Well, first off, all you have to do is click Start Coding. You don't even have to make an account. And then you can choose from over 50 different languages. We're going to use SQLite for this course. You can also use MySQL. The syntax will all be the same. Then press Create REPL, and you'll have a brand new file open here in SQL. Let's break down the different aspects of this online integrated development environment. On the left-hand side, you have your files hierarchy, version control, and settings where you can adjust, like changing the layout, changing the theme from light to dark, changing the font size, and we'll be using a large font size for our mobile users. And you can also change wrapping and auto-complete. You can also toggle this left-hand sidebar, and here in the main.sql file, you have your actual file here. Any code you type here in main.sql will be run in the console on the right hand side. All you have to do is hit run and you will see your results here on the right hand side. This is what we'll be using to test all of our examples against test cases to verify that we have valid, complete solutions to all of our SQL interview questions. And of course, don't forget to save all your code. Just go to Files and click on these three dots, and you can upload files, upload folders, and download as zip to download all the source code. And of course, we'll have all the source code for you at the end of each section of the course. We can't wait to get started teaching you the most popular SQL questions asked by the likes of various tech companies, whether you're applying to be a software developer, a software engineer, or a SQL developer. This course is for you. So head on over to the first lecture. We are going to be solving our first question together. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to learn how to build a table of records and then display all of the records. in this specific example, we're building a table of movies and displaying all its records. Let's go ahead and jump right in. We'll first begin the transaction with those two exact keywords, and then we'll create a table. So to create a table, you use the keywords create table, and then you give the table a name like movies in this example. After this, you open up the parameters with parentheses and you end the line with a semicolon. And in the parentheses is where you put all of the records that you want, the property names. For example, we could put in a movie ID. We call this property ID, and then we call the data type integer. We can also assign a property to be a primary key, and this will mean that all records that have the ID will be the primary key. We can also add something like a title, so we'll add a property called title, and we'll make it of the data type text. You'll notice we have one data type integer and then another data type text. So we have created a table. Great. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we hit run and pull up the console. Well, you'll see nothing has happened, and that's because we've just created a table, but we haven't inserted any values into the table. So that's what we have to do next. We have to add values. So let's go ahead and do that just below the creation. So we're going to insert records into the table, and to do that, we call the keywords insert into. Then we call the table that we want to insert our record into. For example, we would insert into movies, and then we use the keyword values to state that we are adding in values for this record. We have to put in values that match exactly the parameters of the table. And if we didn't match exactly, then we would get an error. So we have to put in two values here. We have to put in an ID and a title for our specific movie record. Let's close the line with a semicolon and then put in those values right in the parentheses here. So first we put in the movie ID. This can be any identifying integer, such as 1. It could also be 10, 100, whatever, but it has to be unique to the movie and it has to be an integer. Why? Because we specify that the data type of this value must be an integer. After we have added in one value, we also have to put in the title. And that is a text value, which means that we have to enclose it in single quotation marks. In SQL, you must state a value of a text type in quotations, whereas a value of an integer type has no quotations. And you'll also notice it'll be highlighted in a different color, such as red. So here we can put in a random movie title like Soldier of the Dead. And you can capitalize or uncapitalize each of the words, but note that it will be case sensitive. So this is just a random movie name I've put in. It's probably not real, but now just like that, we have a completed line where we have inserted into the table movies a value of 1 and Soldier of the Dead. So two values making up one record. So just like that, we have put in a value into the table. Now we can add more shortly, but let's go ahead and test this first. So let's see what happens when we hit run and pull up the console. Well, we still have nothing being printed, and why is that? Well, because we have to add a few more key lines to the transaction. I encourage you to pause the video and attempt to think, what might we be missing from the table? We've begun the transaction and created the table and inserted one record, but what else might we need? The answer is that we have to commit the table. So we have to commit all the records into the table. And after that, if we want to actually display something from the table, we need another line. And this is going to actually show what is in the table, because right now there's no line here that is actually displaying or selecting anything from the table to show to us in the console. So we actually have to add another line after commit, and that is going to be to select, and this has to be capitalized. And suppose we want to select all the records from the table in this example. Throughout the entire course, we're going to look at different ways to select different values. But let's start off with a simple example of just selecting all the records from the table. And to do that, you call an asterisk after the select keyword. And then you call the keyword from, followed by the name of the table that you want to select from. Select from movies, and don't forget to end it with a semicolon, as per the convention. So this is similar to plain English, where you're selecting all from the table movies. So now let's go ahead and hit that big green run button, and pull up the console. And look at that, we have a new output to the console. We have here one soldier of the dead being logged to the console. That corresponds directly to the values of our one record. So we have just begun a transaction, created a table, inserted a record into the table, committed the transaction, and selected all from that table to display in the console. Let's go ahead and add a few more records into the table. So we'll follow the exact same format. And before we do it, I encourage you to attempt to insert more records into the table. That means add more movies with a movie ID and a movie title. And hit run and attempt to display all of the records in the movies table. Now, after you've done that, we can now show you the answer. We'll insert into, just make sure it's all capitalized, insert into the movies table the values 2, assassin with a spaceship, for example. So again, we're putting in a movie onto the table. Notice that we now have a new title, a unique, distinct title, as well as a unique, distinct ID for the movie. And if we hit run, we'll then pull up the console. As you can see, we now have a second record being shown here in the console. And we can go ahead and test this again. We can add in, insert into movies. We can go ahead and add in another value. Values this time, suppose it has the ID 3. Now we can call this Enemies of the Legacy. So we're just adding another movie. Let's add another one. We can add as many as we want, really, into values 4, Medics of Time. So why is this important? Why do we have to know how to build a table? Well, because we're going to use tables throughout the course to practice our SQL interview questions and to also test out our answers. So we're going to be challenged just like you would be at the SQL interview and at the software developer interview to select items from a table. But typically the questions will be more complex than just selecting all the items. So you'll typically be told like specifics on what you have to select. Like you have to select the title, and you also have to join data from another table with data from this table. So we're going to learn how to perform all of those different types of selections, because that is exactly what you will be asked at the coding interview. So to start off, we just have to learn how to recognize the SQL syntax and build a table and select a simple value from the table. So let's add in one more movie, perhaps insert into movies the values 5, appearance of the aliens. So now if we hit run and we pull up the console, you'll see all of those movies, and I'll just clear it before I run it because otherwise you'll see some of the stuff from the previous run. But as you can see, we have here all 5 movies that we added into the table being displayed. We have being displayed specifically the ID and the title of each movie. And notice that all of the values are separated with a line, and that is to denote that you are displaying a new value in each record. All right, congratulations everyone on learning how to build a table and display all the records. In the next lecture, we're going to continue by looking at more challenging ways to select different items from databases. A table is a very simple database. It's a very small database, but all databases are made up of this type of structure where you have huge tables with millions, billions potentially of records containing billions of values, depending on how large your data set is and how large your database is. In our examples, all we need to work with is some few values, just like you will be given at the coding interview. Thank you all for watching. Head on over to the next lecture. We're going to continue looking at the most popular SQL questions asked at the coding interview. See you there. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to solve the list alphabetically interview question. This goes list all movies in alphabetical order. And of course, this question can be asked not just with movies, but with any table where you have to list all of the records in alphabetical order by a certain value. Now, in this case, they'll be listing all the records in alphabetical order by the title, because we only have two different values here in our table. We have the title, which is a text data type, and the ID, which is an integer data type. Therefore, the only one that can be listed alphabetically is the title, because it's the only one that contains characters. As you can see here, we have 5 different movie records in our table, and after the commit line, we just have to list them in alphabetical order. So let's take a look at how we can do this. First of all, we can use the select keyword to select the ID and title of our table. This is going to select all of the values that match these two different properties. Now, after the select line, we also have to state exactly which table we want to select from. So we use the from keyword and we call the table by its name, movies. This way, SQL will know that you want to select the different values specifically from the movies table, not any other table. In this example, we only have one table, but you may be given several tables with different questions. And sometimes you don't even need to use all the tables, you only need to use a few tables, but you will be given many tables potentially. Now, this is just selecting all of the values from the records, and we actually want to also add in a line that is going to match the constraint of the question, which is to list all movies in alphabetical order. So we've so far listed the movies, and we now have to order them. So we use the keyword order by, 2 keywords. This is going to allow us to order by a certain value. So if we order by the title, because title is a text data type, it's automatically going to be ordered alphabetically. Let's go ahead and test this out. We're going to hit run up here and pull up the console. And as you can see, we now have all of the movies being printed. As you can see, we have AAEMS, which means that all of our titles were sorted alphabetically, and then we got the records containing all of the records values. We got not just the title, but also the movie ID being logged here. So that means that we successfully selected these 2 properties from the movies table, and we ordered them specifically by the title, and it will automatically be ordered in alphabetical order because the title is a text. We're going to look at more types of ordering shortly. Congratulations everyone on solving this interview question. We successfully listed all movies, otherwise known as all records, in a table in alphabetical order. I challenge you to apply this to a different table. Perhaps you want to build another table out, and you can change the name of the property, but as long as you have the text data type and you order by a text data type, such as the title, which has a text data type, then you can use the order by title, this format, to list all of your records in alphabetical order. Congratulations on solving this question. Head on over to the next lecture. We are going to look at more of the most popular SQL questions asked at the coding interview. See you there. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to solve the list all not in specified range interview question. The question goes, write a query to list all movie titles that have been streamed not in the range 0 to 100,000 times. Let's take a look at the input we would be given. First, we are beginning a transaction and we are given a table created known as movies. And as you can see, the table contains an ID, a title, a number of streams, and those are its 3 of the values in each record. We have the ID being the primary key as an integer, the title being a secondary key, but not specified, as a text data type, and then a number of streams value. Now this is the property. It's going to be of an integer type. And just below the movies table, we have inserted 5 values, and you'll typically be given just an outline of the movies table, but for testing purposes, we have also been provided with 5 different records that are inserted into the movies table. Here we have movie with an ID 1 called Soldier of the Dead as its title, and as you can see, it has been streamed 100,000 times. And below that line, we have another movie, this time the ID 2 with the title Assassin with a Spaceship, and it has been streamed 200,000 times. And so on, we have 5 different values just like that. After we have committed the transaction, we can then perform our result. So this is the text we would have to add to produce the output of every movie, and we can select just the titles where its number of streams is not between 0 and 100,000. As you can see, the query says to list only the movie titles, so we don't have to list any other values, any other properties. Let's go ahead and select just that. We'll select the title, and we have to select it from a specific table, such as from movies. And then after we have selected what we're going to return, we have to add the specifications. So we're going to select where the number of streams value is not between 0 and 100,000. And this is how you can select a value at a record where another value is not between some certain values. Let's go ahead and test this out. We'll hit run up top and pull up the console. And as you can see here, we have 4 different titles printed in the console. Assassin with a Spaceship, Enemies of the Legacy, Medics of Time, and Appearance of the Aliens. So that means that we did not print out the name Soldier of the Dead. We did not print that movie title. Why? Because its number of stream times, number of yearly streams, is 100,000. And that was the range we did not allow. Therefore, we did not print that to the console. Just like that, we have learned how to select a value from a table where another value is not in a certain range. We're excluding a range. Congratulations everyone on solving this interview question. Head on over to the next lecture where we are going to look at more common SQL questions asked at the software developer interview. See you there. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to solve the list all in range by multiple properties question. The question goes, write a query to list the titles and genres of all movies in the genres science fiction or fantasy in descending alphabetical order by genre. This may seem like a lot of different details to keep track of in one question, but not to worry, we're going to break down exactly what the question is asking, because this is commonly the format of questions. You'll be given a long sentence full of different specifications that you must take into account when writing your query. Let's take a look at the input, the test data we're going to be given with. First, we're opening up a new transaction, and we are given a table called movies. The table contains the properties of an ID, a title, a genre, and a number of streams. As you can see here, right below the table, we have inserted into the movies table 6 different movies. First, we have a movie with the ID 1 called Soldier of the Dead. Its genre is fantasy, and its number of streams is 100,000. Then below that, we have another movie with the ID 2, the title Assassin with a Spaceship, the genre Science Fiction, and number of streams 200,000. And we follow the same exact format below that line to make another movie of genre fantasy, science fiction, and mythology. So we have here 3 different genres as well as 5 different number of streams. And our job is to list the titles and genres of all of these 6 movies in our database. And we must only list the movies that are science fiction or fantasy. That means we must make sure we do not select the mythology movie. We do not query it. We don't list it. And on top of that, we also have to list all of the science fiction and fantasy movies in descending alphabetical order by the genre specifically, not by the movie title. It's very important to read the question carefully and get all the little details, because if you miss one detail, you can fail the question. So let's go ahead and look at solving this now. We're going to open up a new select query. And what are we selecting? Well, the question asks us to list the titles and genres. That means we have to select the titles and genres and nothing else. So let's get the title and the genre of each movie. Now, in order to actually query the movies table, we have to specify that we want to select from the movies table. This is one way of querying that table. And the next step is to follow the question and follow what the question is asking. The question wants to then have us list all the movies in the genres science fiction or fantasy. That means that is the next specification we must make. We must specify that we want to only select science fiction or fantasy. So to do that, we can add a where clause, a where keyword. We're checking where the genre is in science fiction or fantasy. Let's break down this line. We are looking for the title and genre in the movies table where the genre at that movie is in science fiction or fantasy. The comma between the 2 genre names, that specifies or. And then we call the 2 genre names that we're looking for by name in quotation marks. Let's continue on with the question. Have we finished yet? Well, not quite. We also have the final specification all the way up here that's asking us to list the titles and genres of all the movies in descending alphabetical order by genre, not by title. That's where you may get tripped up, is the alphabetical order is by genre, by the characters in the genre name, not in the title name. So to do that, let's add in another clause. This is going to be the order by clause. The order keyword will let us order all of the values we're displaying, the records we're displaying. And we want to order by the genre. You'll remember from the previous lecture to list records by alphabetical order. You just call the name of the text data type that you want to control the ordering, which in this case is genre. Now that is for ascending alphabetical order. We want to go descending alphabetical order as the question asks. This is another point where you may get tripped up with the question, because descending alphabetical order means you must start at Z and work your way down. So in order to go beyond the default, which is ascending alphabetical order from A to Z, you must also add the keyword des for descending. The des keyword is going to order by the genre in descending alphabetical order. Let's go ahead and test that out. We're going to hit run up top and pull up the console here. And as you can see, we have 5 different movies being listed, and they are only being listed in the science fiction and fantasy genre. And you'll notice that they're all ordered alphabetically in descending alphabetical order by the genre name. That means that the science fiction genres are listed first. All the science fiction movies are above the fantasy movies. And why? Because S is after F in the alphabet. Therefore, S comes first in descending alphabetical order. F would come first in ascending alphabetical order, the default, but we added the des keyword to specify descending alphabetical order by genre. You'll notice the titles themselves, they're in random order. They are in the order that they were added into the table, and then it is the overall genres that are grouped in terms of the ordering. Congratulations, everyone. This test proved that we successfully solved the list all in range by multiple properties interview question. Thank you all for watching. Head on over to the next lecture. We're going to look at more of the popular SQL questions asked at the coding interview, and we're going to get really good at really reading the question, understanding exactly what it's asking for, and breaking down the question to make sure we follow its specifications to the every detail. Head on over to that next lecture. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to solve the display all with characters in property question. The question goes write a query to list the titles of all movies that have both an A and O in their title. We are given a transaction where there's a table created, and each table record contains an ID, a title, a genre, and a number of streams. Then we are given the insertion of 6 different movies into the movies table. We are given Soldier of the Dead, a fantasy with 100,000 streams, Assassin with a Spaceship, which is a science fiction movie with 200,000 streams, and so on and so forth. We have 3 different genres here, 6 different movies with 6 different IDs, and 5 different number of streams, because the last 2 both have 500,000 streams. So let's go ahead and solve the question. First of all, what do we have to select? Well, the question will tell us everything we need to know. The question tells us to list the titles of all movies and nothing else. That means we're only selecting the title. So we'll call a select keyword on the title property. And below that, we have to continue on. So let's see, the question then asks us to specify where the title has an A and an O. So we are going to have to narrow down our selection from not just every title, but from only titles that have an A and an O. Not titles that have an A or an O, but titles that have both letters. So how can we do this? Well, first of all, we have to specify where the title property comes from. It comes from the movies table. Then we can actually go into specifying what the title should be narrowed down by. What we can do is use the where keyword on our property title, where the title is like the character A. Let's break down this line. I have one extra A there. Let's break down this line. We're using the where keyword to narrow down the title values that we're selecting. We're using the like keyword to look for a character inside of the title. We're saying that the title selected must be like a title that has A anywhere inside of it. And you'll notice that we use the 2 percentage signs or modulo operators to specify that we're looking for an A anywhere inside of the title. Now let's see if we're done. Let's look at the question. The question wants us to ensure that we're listing the titles that have both an A and an O in the title. So we also have to add in the specification for the letter O. So how do we concatenate? How do we combine 2 different specifications? Because we don't want to allow the title to have A or O. We want to ensure the title has A and O. So to do that, we use the AND keyword to combine 2 different clauses. In this case, we can combine two different where clauses. We can add and the title must be like a title with an O somewhere in it. And we use a semicolon to close the line. As you can see here, we have combined two different where clauses with the and keyword. And just like that, we can check the question to ensure that we have gone ahead and matched all of its requirements. Write a query to list the titles, yes, of all movies, yes, that have both an A and an O in their title. Excellent, so we should have it completely done. Let's go ahead and hit run to test out our selection on this exact table that we were given. If I pull up the console, I'll now see I have three different names being logged in the console. Soldier of the Dead, which contains an A and an O. Enemies of the Legacy, which contains an A and an O. Medics of Time contains an O but not an A, therefore it's not logged in the console. Appearance of the Aliens contains an A and an O. And Beowulf contains just an O, so it's not logged. Only three movies contain an A and an O, therefore only these three movies are logged. One point where you may get tripped up with this question is that we must look for A and O in the title. Because we have two different text values here, we have the title as a text and the genre as a text right beside each other, it can be easy to accidentally search for the A and the O in the genre. So make sure you're looking for the A and the O in the title, which is a text data type. Congratulations everyone on solving the display all with characters in property interview question. Head on over to the next lecture. We're going to look at more of the most popular SQL questions asked at the software developer interview. See you there. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL interview questions course. In this lecture, we're going to solve the select from where in this and not in that question. The question goes, write a query to list the title, genre, and number of streams for all movies whose genre is that of science fiction or fantasy, and whose number of streams is not equal to 0 or 1. We are given a transaction where there is a table created called movies, and each movie will contain an ID, a title, a genre, and a number of streams. And inserted into that movies table are 6 movies: Soldier of the Dead, Assassin with a Spaceship, Enemies of the Legacy, Medics of Time, Appearance of the Aliens, and Beowulf. And there are 3 different genres that each of the movies can fall into. As well, each movie has a number of streams. Soldier of the Dead has 0 number of streams. Assassin with a Spaceship has 1 number of streams. And Enemies of the Legacy has 300,000 number of streams, and so on. Now, we want to select all of the movies that are science fiction or fantasy, so not the mythology one, specifically in this database. If you got a larger database, there could definitely be more genres and more variations on the number of streams. Typically, though, you'll just be given the case scenario with potentially not even any test cases. Alright, so you'll also see that some movies have 0 or 1 or more number of streams, and we must list all the movies except for these 2 appear 0 and 1 streams. Let's go ahead and look into how we can go about selecting from where in this and not in that. So down here we're going to open up a new select query. So what are we selecting? Well, the title or the question itself gave it away. The question is asking us to list the title, the genre, and the number of streams. These are the 3 different values we're going to query for. So we have to select those exact 3. We're selecting the title, genre, and number of streams. Just separate each of the names of the properties with a comma, and that will be enough. And after that, as always, what do we have to specify? Well, we have to specify where we're selecting from. We're selecting from the movies table as per usual. After that, we can continue on with looking at the specifications of the question. So first of all, we have to select all movies whose genre is that of science fiction or fantasy. So let's go ahead and select for that first. We have to add a constraint. We can do that with the where keyword, where a certain property like genre is in a certain value. That means it's in science fiction or fantasy. Alright, so just like that, we have narrowed down the genres. Let's look at what else the question is asking us beyond just the genre. We also have to then narrow down all of the movies whose number of streams is not equal to 0 or 1. So we're going to use a exclusionary constraint here, an exclusionary clause. So we're going to add and, because we are narrowing deeper down. If we had or, that means we're widening out our selection, but we have and in order to narrow down our selection deeper and deeper. So we're ensuring that the number of streams is not in 0 or 1. We can use here the not in keywords. This is going to ensure that the number of streams is not equal to. In is another way to say equal to in terms of SQL, where the number of streams is not equal to 0 or 1. And let's check if we have any more specifications in the question. And no, we have to list the title, genre, and number of streams, check. For all movies whose genre is that of science fiction or fantasy, check. And whose number of streams is not equal to 0 or 1, check. Okay, we've met all of the requirements of the question. Let's test it out. Let's go ahead and hit run up here and pull up the console. As you can see, we have being listed enemies of the legacy, medics of time, and appearance of the aliens. These are all inside of the science fiction and fantasy genres, yes. And you'll notice one is missing, assassins with a spaceship. And why is it missing? Well, because it has one stream, which is not allowed as per our narrowing down of the different records. We've narrowed down the different movies down to science fiction or fantasy, and then down to more than one stream. Congratulations, everyone. This just proved that we have solved the question with our query down here. Congratulations, and head on over to the next lecture. We're going to continue looking at how to restrict and how to sort data by solving the most common SQL questions asked at the coding interview. See you in the next lecture. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to solve the list all with exact number of characters question. The question goes, write a query to list the movie titles, genre, and number of streams that have exactly 7 characters in the title. We would be given a transaction or a diagram containing a table of movies, and will be given that every record in the movies table contains an ID, a title, a genre, and a number of streams. We will also be given potentially some records, some sample records, like a Soldier of the Dead movie, an Assassin with a Spaceship movie, and an Enemies of the Legacy movie. And each movie will have an ID, a title, a genre, and a number of streams. Let's go ahead, and now that we've understood the question as well as the input data, let's go ahead and solve it. So we'll open up a select keyword, a select query. What are we selecting? The question tells us we are listing the movie titles, genre, and number of streams. Those are the 3 properties we must select. So we'll select just that. We'll select the title, genre, and number of streams. We also, as always, have to specify what? we have to specify where we're selecting from. So we are selecting from the movies table. This line with the from keyword tells us where we're selecting all these properties from, what table. After that, we have to go back to the question and look at the constraints. We have to only select those titles, those movies that have exactly 7 characters in the title. Okay, so we're counting the characters in that title value at each movie record. For example, in Soldier of the Dead, we're counting the characters. In Assassin with a Spaceship, we're counting the characters of that exact text, a title. And if it's equal to 7, we will list it. If the title is not equal to 7 characters, we will not list it. So we're narrowing down deeper into the table. We're not just selecting all of the movies, we're narrowing down. So how do we narrow down? By character count. That is essentially the question. To do that, we call the where keyword, as per usual. And we're looking for where the title is 7 characters. So we call where title is like another title. And what kind of title could we use to count 7 characters? Well, to do that, we open up the single quotation marks and we add 7 underscores. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So an underscore is just like that, but you have to make sure they're all next to each other without any spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we have 7 spaces here. And this text of spaces, that is what represents a 7-character text. The actual characters themselves, the alphabet letters, they don't matter. Because we're using underscores, all that matters is the count. And that is how you can count characters in SQL. Let's add a semicolon as per the syntax convention. Let's check the question to see if there are any more constraints. Write a query to list the movie titles, genre, and number of streams. Yes, that have exactly 7 characters in the title. Yes, we have checked that each title contains exactly 7 characters. And note that the question is asking us to count the title, not the genre text. Both the title and the genre in this example are of the text data type, but we are only counting the characters in the title property, in the title value for each record. So let's go ahead and test out our solution now. Let's hit run up here at the top and pull up the console to see the result. And as you can see, all that we have being logged is Beowulf. That is the only movie being logged alongside its genre, mythology, and its number of streams, 500,000. This means we successfully logged the 3 different values that the question asked us to log, and we also matched the constraint, which was to only do that for the movies with 7-character titles. Beowulf is the only movie with 7 characters in its title. Soldier of the Dead, it definitely has more than 7. Assassin with a Spaceship definitely has more than 7 characters. So Beowulf is the only one with 7 characters. Therefore, it's the only one we log here in the console. Congratulations everyone on solving another question. You just solved the list all with exact number of characters question. Head on over to the next lecture. We're going to be continuing with our restricting and sorting of data. This is one of the most common categories asked about in SQL at the General Software Developer interview. We'll see you in the next lecture. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to solve the list all with specific 2nd character question. The question goes, write a query to list the movie titles, genre, and number of streams that have E as the 2nd character in the title. Let's take a look at an example. We're beginning a transaction and creating a table called movies. This would be given to us with the question. The table contains the properties of an ID, a title, a genre, and a number of streams. We're also given 6 different movies that are inserted into the movies table, and each of them has different values that correspond to the required properties. Let's go ahead and begin solving the question. First, we have to select what the question requires us to list. So we're required to list the movie title, genre, and number of streams. Let's add those to match. We're selecting the title, genre, and number of streams, each separated by a comma. After that, we have to specify selecting from where. Well, we're selecting from the movies table. We must specify from which table we want to select. If there are multiple tables, then you must specify exactly where the properties are coming from. And after that, we have to go ahead and come back to the question and see the constraints that we must match. We can only print the movies that have an E as the second character, quite specific. So you'll see Soldier of the Dead has an O as the second character. Assassin with a Spaceship, that title has S as the second character. Enemies of the Legacy, that title has N as the second character. And Medics of Time, that title has E as the second character. This is one title that we would want to print. And we'd want to print not only the title, but also the title, the genre, and the number of streams, as the question requires. So how do we check for the second character? To do that, we can call the where keyword to open up a new clause, and we're checking where the title is like a title that has E as the second character. To do that, we use the underscore followed by E percentage. This is specifying that the title must be equal to or similar to a title that has any first character, but then E as the second character, and any following characters. The percentage here, modulo operator, that is to show that any character can be after E. And the underscore shows that the number of letters before E must be 1. Alright, so just like that, we have gone ahead and selected from the movies the title, the genre, and the number of streams to display for each movie, where the title of that movie is like a title that has E as the second character. Let's go ahead and hit run now to test this out. We'll pull up the console to see the result, and as you can see, we have printed in the console Medics of Time. We have printed the title, the genre, and the number of streams. Below that, we also have printed Beowulf, its title, genre, and number of streams. And those are the only 2 movies that have E in the title from our small database here, our table. This just proved that we successfully solved this interview question. Congratulations everyone on solving this question. I encourage you to take the question further, and I challenge you to test it out on other letters. Like suppose you wanted to make sure that the first letter was E, or that the first letter was capital E, or that the third letter was S, for example. I challenge you to go above and beyond and first play around with checking different letters, and then try adding a clause so that the first letter must be E and the second letter must be D. I challenge you to go ahead and add in the combination of the clause. Other than that, you have solved this interview question. List all with a specific second character. Congratulations, and head on over to the next lecture. We are going to continue looking at questions that require us to sort and restrict data, just like this question. Head on over to that next lecture. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to solve the list all distinct IDs available question. The question goes, write a query to list the genres available in the movies table. As you can see, we're given a transaction where there is a movies table, and each of the records would contain an ID, a title, a genre, and the number of streams of each movie. As well, we're given 6 different movies with values that correspond to each of those properties: an ID, a title, a genre, and a number of streams. The question is asking us to list all the distinct genres. In this case, we'd have to list fantasy, followed by science fiction, and finally mythology, because those are the 3 unique genres available in the movies table. So let's go ahead and do just that. First, we will call the select keyword to open up a query. And how do we select a distinct genre? Because typically we've just selected a genre or any property by its name, but this would select all of the genres, and it would list fantasy, science fiction, fantasy, science fiction, science fiction. So it would display all of them, but we want only the distinct ones. So to do that, we can use the keyword distinct right after select. Select by default on its own selects all of the values in the property, in this case in the property genre, and distinct will narrow down to only select the distinct genres. That means it will not print the same genre twice. After that, we have to finally add one more line, and can you tell me what it is? It is the location of the selection. So we're selecting from what? From which table? In this case, is from the movies table. This is another way to specify the movies table just with its direct name all capitalized. Alright, so let's go ahead and test this out. Just like that, that is all we need. Let's hit run. And we'll pull up the console here. And we have printed, logged in the console, fantasy, science fiction, and mythology. Those are the 3 distinct genres. Congratulations on solving the list all distinct IDs available question. I challenge you to take this question further and list only the genres of science fiction and fantasy if they are present in that column. I also challenge you to test for a genre not present. So what would you do if you wanted to print out the genres science fiction and true crime? Well, true crime is not present in the database, so I challenge you to test what happens when you try out that unique scenario. Other than that, congratulations everyone, you have solved the question. Head on over to the next lecture. We are going to continue looking at sorting and restricting data with the most popular SQL questions that will be asked at the coding interview. See you there. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we're going to solve the calculate percentage question. The question goes, write a query to list the titles, number of yearly streams, and number of monthly streams of all the movies. The number of monthly streams can be calculated by dividing the number of yearly streams by 12, because we are only given the number of yearly streams. So we're going to have to use some calculations to find the monthly streams. We are given with this question a transaction where there is a table of movies. And of course, this can be applied to a table of any type. But for our example, we're using a movies table. Every record will have the property of an ID, a title, a genre, and a number of yearly streams. And we are also given 6 different movies inserted into the table. And as you can see, each movie has an ID, a title, a genre, and a number of yearly streams. Let's go ahead and start solving the question down here. First, we can select what is required to be listed. In this case, we have to list the titles, number of yearly streams, and number of monthly streams. So to do that, we can call the title as well as the number of yearly streams. And now we have to calculate the number of monthly streams. So how do we do that? Well, we take the number of yearly streams and we divide it by 12. And then we can assign a new name to this new value, and that will be number of monthly streams. And notice that number of monthly streams is not present anywhere in the table name. Nowhere is it a property, but we're making a new property here. And this is a way to make a new property directly in your selection. And after we have selected a certain value, all we need next is to select from a certain table, in this case from the name movies, from the movies table. And let's check the question again to make sure we haven't missed anything. List the titles, number of yearly streams, and number of monthly streams of all the movies. We're not given any more constraints, which means that this is all that we need in order to solve the question. Let's go ahead and test the solution. We'll hit run and pull up the console. And as you can see here, we have listed all 6 of our movies, and we have also listed the number of yearly streams, and following that we have also listed the number of monthly streams, and we do that by getting 1/12 of the yearly streams. Alright, just like that, we have proven that we have solved the question. I challenge you to add titles to the results, so add the title, number of yearly streams, and number of monthly streams, so that way you know which column is which. And I also challenge you to format the table so that it is output in more of a spaced out fashion. Other than that, we have solved the question. As you can see, we have 0 here for the yearly streams and 0 for the monthly streams. For movie 2, we have 1 as the number of yearly streams and 0 as the number of monthly streams. That is because 1 divided by 12 is going to be above 0, but the result of the number of monthly streams gets rounded to the 0. The decimal places get chopped off, and therefore we're left with just 0, no decimal places. You can change this as well. You'll just have to change the integers to doubles, either in the number of yearly streams or in your result, number of monthly streams. I challenge you to also go ahead and format that to take this question further. Congratulations everyone on solving the calculate percentage question. In the next lecture, we're going to continue on with the most popular SQL questions that come up at the software developer interview. We'll see you in the next lecture. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our SQL Interview Questions course. In this lecture, we are solving the consecutive numbers interview question. This question goes, write a SQL query to find all numbers that appear at least 3 times consecutively. We're given a table that we have to work with, a table called logs, and every log record is going to contain an ID and a number. We're looking for that number column, and we're trying to find all of the values that appear at least 3 times consecutively. Let's take a look. First, we have 1 logs record of ID 1, and the number is 100. And below that, we have 100 again, then 100 again. That is at least 3 times consecutively. That means that we definitely want 100 to appear in our query result. After that, we have 200, 100, 200, 200. Nowhere else does a number appear at least 3 times consecutively in a row. Consecutively means in a row, but they mean in the column. Therefore, we're going to expect 100 to be logged and nothing else. So how can we find consecutive numbers? Well, what we can do is compare 3 records at a time. We're always going to compare the current record against its immediate previous one and second previous one. And we're going to compare them for equality, so we'll use constraints. Let's see exactly how this looks. So first of all, we're selecting the distinct L1.number as consecutive numbers. This as is right here, the as consecutive numbers, that is optional, but we're selecting the distinct number. And what is L1? Well, we have to define it. We can call this log1 L1. We're referring to a logs record. So let's go ahead and define log1. We're selecting from the logs table log1. Now we're also going to have to select logs log2 and logs log3. So we're having 3 references to the logs table. Why are we having 3 references? Well, again, we're having 3 references because we're going to take every record and compare it against its previous and its second previous. We need to do it for 3 records because the question asks us to find all numbers that appear at least 3 times consecutively. So we have to keep track of the consecutive trios. Now, if the question asked us to find all numbers that appear at least 4 times consecutively, we would need 4 references here to 4 records at a time. Now we have to keep going. We have to constrain our query because we need to find where log1.id equals log2.id minus 1. So why are we using this as our first constraint? This is covering that consecutive aspect. We're looking for the previous ID, which means the previous record in order. We have log 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they have numbers 100, 100, 100, 200, 100, 200, 200. We're focusing on the ID first because we need consecutive numbers, which means the records must be in order. That's why we're getting the previous record here. After that, we have to use the AND keyword, and we also need log2.id to equal log3.id minus 1. And what we're doing here is we're getting first the previous, then the second previous. And as such, we are going to have 3 consecutive records with this constraint. But we're not done yet. We have to constrain further because not only do we need 3 consecutive logs, but we also need to ensure that their number properties, the value at the number column, is equal because we're looking for the numbers that appear 3 times consecutively. We're looking for the equality next. Do all 3 records contain the same value? If so, we're going to display that record. So we'll add another constraint. We're saying and log1.number equals log2.number. And can you tell me what the final constraint should be? Well, it should be that log2.number is equal to log3.number because we need to have all 3 records that we're looking at consecutively to be equal. So let's now test this. We have everything that we should need for the solutions. Let's pull up the console and hit run. And we have 100 logged in the console, nothing more, nothing less. Why do we have 100 logged? Again, 100 is the only number to appear at least 3 times consecutively. Now we can also try more values. We can try inputting 4 values to see if we can find more consecutiveness. So let's add them at the bottom perhaps. What would happen if we added more logs here, more log records? This time we have 4 consecutive values. Let's hit run again, and this time we have 100 and 200 being logged in the console. And you can even test it on some more. You can paste these in, and we just have to increment the ID because we're looking for consecutive records, and hit run again. And still we have this time 100, 100, oh no, just 100 and 200. That was just from the previous run. That's why we saw 100 twice, but we should only see each number once. Even though 200 appears 6 times consecutively, we still only log it once because the question asked to find all numbers that appear at least 3 times consecutively. Typically with questions, you want to write some of your own test cases and test it on weird values, like what would happen if you had nothing here in the logs. What would happen then? Well, you get a syntax error. So I encourage you to try on different test cases, insert different values into the log table, and see what happens. Make sure that when you have a long stream, like 6 different records, make sure that each of the consecutive numbers only appears once here in the console. Now we can test it again on another value. Suppose we added in as 12 and then 13 and then 14. Suppose we added in 100 a second time and then we hit run. Well, what is being logged then? Still 100 and 200. So even though 100 appears in 2 different streaks, we have here one streak and up here we have another streak, even though they're appearing in two different streaks, we still only log 101 time. That's because the question asked us to find all numbers that appear at least 3 times consecutively, but it didn't say to match the number of times the number is appearing consecutively to be logged. Instead, we have to only display it no matter how many times it appears consecutively, as long as it appears at least 3 times consecutively. Even it can be in 2 different places, but we still only log 101 time. And how would we get that? Well, that's because we added this distinct. We're only logging the distinct number. So just by adding the distinct keyword here, we have only the distinct log 1. In fact, we can try to remove distinct and test that as well. I always encourage you to test often. And look, once we removed distinct, now we have so many values being printed. We have 100 and 200 lots of times. Let's see if we cleared it and hit run again. Here we have 200 appearing 4 times. So the distinct keyword here is extremely important. We must have the word distinct, otherwise we'll get numbers being logged too often. The distinct keyword is one that is easy to forget, so make sure you keep that in mind, that it's very easy to mess up with these questions just by missing tiny little details, but that's what you're here for, is to learn. Congratulations everyone who just solved the consecutive numbers interview question. We will see you in the next lecture.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this course. If you want to watch the rest of the course, the link is down below. Not only will you get the access to this course, but you'll get access to a lot of other courses in a huge bundle, and it's on sale today. So buy before the sale ends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.